Okay. Where did y'all decide?
Wait, we said RA Bistro or the Water Dog.
Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Lynchburg. We're glad everybody's here this morning, and it's wonderful to see some new faces, returning faces. Here we gather in a spirit of freedom and friendship. Whoever you are, whatever your beliefs, whatever your age and whomever you love, you are welcome here. As we work together for justice, compassion, and peace, we also acknowledge with humility that our buildings sit on Monacan land. My name is Terry Bailiff. I'm the professional minister of this congregation, but I share the ministry with all the members and friends of this community. If you're here with us for the first time, we're glad you chose to be here this morning to participate in the service for this church community we love. We'd be happy to tell you more about our congregation during virtual social time following the service, and then in conversation here in the sanctuary. If you'd like to receive our monthly newsletter and Friday email updates, please fill out the virtual visitor card found on our website, uulynchburg.org. Under Sunday services, if you're on Zoom, and if you're here, there's a yellow card in the back of the chair in front of you. When you fill it out, you can put it in the offertory basket. You may also want to join our Facebook group. Please note that this summer, our young people meet in their classes from the beginning of the service, but today, with people traveling, there aren't services. But I think everybody has a packet who wants one, except the adults who need something to do with their hands, and they can go back and get an activity pack if they would like. Today, after the service and social time, those who consider themselves young adult, 18 to 35, we've already established that David Wilson cannot be in the group anymore. We're going to wander over to, what is it, the dog? The water dog. You got that, Andrea? Water dog? Good. So I now invite us to release our worries about the world and our own lives as we enter into the service by taking a few calm, slow breaths. As we enter our time of worship, we light the flame of our chalice, sharing these words. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, O Spirit of life. This morning, I invite us to consider the essence of patriotism, which I believe is more inclusive than serving in the military or wearing poppies as the British and Canadians still do. There is another side to patriotism necessary to safeguard our freedoms. Throughout the history of our country, there have been many who reminded us of what healthy patriotism means. It means having the courage to disagree with our government, to dissent. Here are a few thoughts about the kind of patriotism I find to be essential for the health of our nation. From Shepherd Fairley, I want to be proud of this country, but when aspects of our policy don't align with my ethics, I want to protest them and try to change them. Being complicit because it's the home team is nationalism, not patriotism. Barbara Ehrenreich said, no matter that patriotism is too often the refuge of scoundrels, dissent, rebellion, and all-around hell-raising remain the true duty of patriots. Edward Abbey. A patriot must always be ready to defend his country against his government. James Baldwin. I love America more than any other country in the world, and exactly for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually. The lyrics of our opening hymn are from a lengthy poem written in 1845, The Present Crisis, written by Unitarian poet and abolitionist James Russell Lowell. It was written as a protest against the Mexican-American War. Lowell was he was not only a poet, but he was also a leading abolitionist and opposed the Mexican-American War, in large part because it brought another slave state, Texas, into the Union. Decades later, it became the inspiration for the title of The Crisis, a magazine published by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. While this hymn has some dated language, it has stood the test of time. And for generations, it has held fast, insisting on the importance of our ethics. It was interesting yesterday as I was researching the hymn to find out that today it is also used without mention of its history by anti-abortionist ministers to support their cause. However, its original intent and message is a call for people of faith to choose virtue and truth. Let us now share hymn 119, Once to Every Soul and Nation, and rise as you are willing and able. Thank you, and be seated. We forgot to sing on the first verse. I did, I was focusing on the words. Ah, the ministries of our congregation are supported by the love, talent, and efforts of our many volunteers and staff, as well as the monetary support of our members and friends. If you have found this church to be of value in your life, then I invite you to use the offering baskets here in the sanctuary, or if you're on Zoom, to use the donate button found at uulynchburg.org to make donations. Gifts given in love and hope continue a cycle of love and hope. Let us pause as the recording is turned off for joys and concerns. We hold up today our joys, our privileges, our lives, which are full of wonder and mystery and accomplishments. And we also hold up the struggles that are part of our lives. Those struggles that come unbidden and unexpected into our lives. May we trust and know in our hearts that we are not alone, but supported by this community, family, and friends who will be there for us as we move along life's path. We hold up today those who are ill in mind, body, or spirit, that they may find healing and wholeness. We hold up also those in our society who are hungry, who lack housing and medical care. May we work with other people of goodwill to help build a more just, loving, and inclusive society. We hold up our concern about the polarization and the trajectory that we see in our nation. May we find strength to continue the work, even work that we thought was safely put to bed. Let us stand side by side with those who seek a more just and loving nation. This we ask in the name of all that is sacred. Amen. few minutes, we're going to share a video of a friend reading a poem he wrote during the retreat that I participated in a week or so ago. And it was very sweet. I don't think a minister had ever asked Eddie to read anything. I mean, he's from New York and Jewish and a comic. I mean, they don't usually get asked to read a poem in a church for Sunday morning. So he was very nervous. And at the end, he was like, did I do okay? So anyway, maybe he'll do a service on the power of comedy sometime. As you know, over Memorial Day weekend, I helped lead a memorial service for my dear adopted mother. It had been a long time since I was part of a service that contained so much Trinitarian theology. We sang For All the Saints, which I have always loved, but for decades I've sung the way Unitarians sing it rather than the traditional language. But so when I went into the memorial service, I really did have a different perspective. And I had forgotten there were so many war lyrics, words about conquering our foes. And frankly, I found it offensive. I spend so much of my life working to build interfaith and multicultural understandings that I don't think I can sing words about conquering those who believe differently than we do. In the last few years, I've also become more sensitive to the reality that some of the hymns in our gray hymnal also include some of that language. And I tend not to choose those anymore, even though historically I've loved them. These days, I focus on the power and influence that the words we hear and speak and sing have. We talk all the time about how our young people can be bullied in school, but those same concepts and words can affect communities, congregations, whole groups of people. In these days, living in a polarized nation, we need to focus more on the words we use. We need to use words that build connections rather than encourage division. If we speak of hatred for those with whom we disagree, or speaking things that are more drastic for their lives, how are we different from those with whom we profoundly disagree? All this thinking led me to reflect on patriotism and the celebration of the 4th of July. As some of you know, I grew up in a family where patriotism was more important than religion. I read J. Edgar Hoover's writings, sold puppies on Veterans Day, which actually I love doing, and spouted what were probably more nationalist than patriotic slogans when I was young. My great aunt, with whom I lived for some years, was a diehard patriot. She worked with military families who needed food, and every year she made the wreath that was laid on the tomb of the unknown soldier in Memphis. During both the World Wars, she worked for the Selective Service to put conscientious objectors in prison. She was formidable. Yet as my world expanded, I realized that what I had learned was not the whole story. When a young man from my high school died in Vietnam early in the war, my worldview shifted. And there began my commitment to define patriotism in another way. My belief was that the Vietnam War was wrong, and that as a dedicated American, I should voice my belief that the war needed to end. Shortly after that, I began to contact folks working in the civil rights movement. Neither of those positions were popular at home. As I reflect on my life, like many of us here, I feel my life has been shaped by the social justice issues with which I've been involved. This week, my emotions have settled into the reality that I will work yet again for the rights of women. I have been involved in activities and actions because I'm a patriotic American. Patriotism encourages the voice of the people. Nationalism holds on to one rigid belief. Patriotism means everybody has a voice that needs to be heard. Nationalism, it's the stage for bullies who seek to take the voice and vote away from the people. When I think about it, I come more and more to believe that it is dissent that keeps our democracy viable. The issue today is that as a people, we forgot that we must always be vigilant to protect the rights we have. Prophets in our day have spoken to this. Elie Wiesel said, we must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. And Bishop Desmond Tutu said, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. As I thought about how to talk about the 4th of July and patriotism, I came across a lecture given by Frederick Douglass on July the 5th, 1852. Was delivered in Rochester, New York, in Corinthian Hall. The title was, What to the Slave is the 4th of July? It's a great patriotic speech, though I imagine that the people hearing the words in 1852 probably didn't receive it in such a manner. Of course, there is no way to compare the horror of slavery to some of our current political situations, and yet we can learn from Frederick Douglass. Excuse me. We today are committed to lifting up all women. We are committed to the rights of all people and to ending racism. Excuse me. I forgot the allergy medicine this morning. We need to hear these words from Frederick Douglass, for he lived with the horror of slavery, and were he alive today, he would once again be on the front lines. And of the 4th of July, he said, I say it with a sad sense of the disparity between us. I'm not included within the pale of glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them. In words that seem prescient about today's injustices, he said, and the language is very dated, would you have me argue that man is entitled to liberty? That he is the rightful owner of his own body? You have already declared it. Must I argue the wrongfulness of slavery? Is that a question for Republicans? Is it to be settled by the rules of logic and argumentation as a manner beset with great difficulty involving a doubtful application of the principle of justice hard to be understood? How should I look today in the presence of Americans dividing and subdividing a discourse to show that men have a natural right to freedom? The most famous part of his speech is a paragraph where he says, go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world, travel through South America, search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practices of this nation. And you will say to me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rival. And yet, despite his condemnation of aspects of our nation and of the 4th of July as a holiday offensive to enslaved and oppressed people, Douglass had great respect for the Declaration of Independence. As he gets close to the end of his speech, he says, allow me to say in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country. There are forces in operation which will inevitably work the downfall of slavery. I therefore leave off where I began, with hope. While drawing encouragement from the Declaration of the Independence, the great principles it contains, and the genius of American institutions, my spirit is also cheered by the obvious tendencies of the age. Nations do not now stand in the same relation to each other as they did ages ago. No nation shall now shut itself up from the surrounding world and trot around in the same old path of its fathers without interference. Douglas ends his speech with a word of hope and the possibility that change would come. In part, he believed, because of the influence of other nations. And finally, he stated his total commitment to ending slavery. Until that year, day, hour arrive, with head and heart and hand, I'll strive to break the rod, so witness heaven. In human history, we're still a young nation. We're still learning how to empower people so that there can be justice and liberty for all. We're a nation where many suffer, and we're a nation that created the Declaration of Human Rights, the foundation of the Constitution of many nations. Though we have worked to build a more inclusive and peaceful nation, the work is not yet done. With a big sigh, we need to help each other stand again and begin the work again. And we need to be brave enough to accept the consequences of our dissent. Dr. King talked about this when he said, an individual who breaks the law that conscience tells him is unjust and who willingly accepts the penalty of imprisonment in order to arouse the conscience of the community over its injustice is in reality expressing the highest respect for the law. We cannot be complacent. We need to express our patriotic duty. As we look to the future, to focus on a vision of a more just and inclusive nation, we might take into consideration the words of Unitarian Buckminster Fuller. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So what might we build with other people of faith? Our young people this summer are exploring this very subject. They're building a chalice town based on our principles. What kind of community do we adults want to have as a model? What do we need to encourage to build a healthy community where we are all seen, respected, and encouraged? I began to think about this after I heard the poem I told you about at the retreat where I participated in Portland. It speaks to me about the wonder, the humor, the possibility of being together as a human family. So I offer this poem by Eddie Greenberg, Nasruddin, in his Sufi family, and he shares now his musings with us. And I recorded it because he's on the West Coast and he's not a morning person. So we recorded it at 10 p.m. on Friday evening. So David, thank you for helping me get this to you. Nasruddin, thank you so much for your willingness to share the powerful words that you wrote for us at the retreat. Thank you.
My pleasure. Oh, human beings, meet Jesus on the cross. Rise up to your potential. Greet Moses post golden calf. Surrender to peace, even a little. Reconnoiter with laughter on a daily basis. Make Groucho Marx your #1 philosopher. Oh, humans, feed each other, nurture each other, forgive each other before it's too late, which it might be already. Oh, humans, give up your littering today. Rise up to purify this planet of hatred, jealousy, rage, and warfare. Give up your need for it. Oh, my fellow humans, don't wait for disaster to really be there for each other. Oh, humans, we need each other. We truly do. We are the greatest miracle. Oh, brothers and sisters, when we can again, post-plague, of course, take each other in our arms, wash each other's feet. We are all we have. Oh, friends, gaze into each other's eyes. Look at God. She's in there behind the eyes, staring out like some Kilroy was here picture. Oh, my fellow beings, give up your fears, both real and unreal. Give up your feeling of separation, your endless attempts at trying to get rid of your feeling separate is like trying to blow out the picture of a candle. Oh, my friends, bow down to the great, mysterious, unknown, unfathomable, unfigure out ability of this so-called human experience. Try stopping an earthquake, a tornado, a virus. That's mostly for those with control issues. A great being was once asked, "Why are we here?" And he said, "We're here to find out why we're here." Oh, my brothers and sisters of the Spirit, click the ruby slippers that are deep in your heart today. And in that cavern within, say to yourself, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. Oh, my fellow human beings, don't you know yet that we are all madly in love with each other? And maybe one day we will know it like we know how to breathe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Was that good?
Finding ways to affirm one another, to begin to see each other as unique, precious individuals and part of our human family is more important than ever now. We need to find ways to reclaim ourselves. Let patriotism be a call which emboldens us to speak truth to power and to love one another. Let us build a new model for our world and our relationships that reflect our values and how we wish to be in the world. And may we commit ourselves each day to take one more step toward a more just, loving, and hopeful world. Let us rise in body and spirit to share together our closing hymn, number 168.
One more step we will take. One more song, we will sing one more song, till every song is sung by everyone. We'll sing one more song.
Thank you, and be seated. As our service draws to a close, we extinguish the flame of our chalice as we share these words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our closing words of benediction, there were so many wonderful quotes that I just couldn't throw them out. A prophet, Bob Marley. Get up, stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Martin Luther King Jr. One has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. Mahatma Gandhi. Silence becomes cowardice when occasion demands speaking out the whole truth and acting accordingly. Howard Zinn. Protest beyond the law is not a departure from democracy. It is absolutely essential to it. Let us go in peace, seeking justice and love and hope. And now let us take a few moments of social time and conversation.
Prelude, a postlude.
Oh, sorry, I forgot again, the postlude. We'll be quiet now. Let's have a few minutes for conversation. I think I forget the postlude because I